In this video, we are going to talk about something called retroactive jealousy, the signs that you may have it, and how to get over it. So, even the most evolved of us tend to look back at prior relationships in terms of black and white, and we think that we are not, or that we are the type of person who gets jealous, or we're not, and it depending on which side that we identify with at the end of the day. And we may ignore any emotional experience that falls outside of this category. And I can say that I'm not necessarily a jealous person. I have been a jealous person in general in the past, but I'd be lying if I said that I didn't ever experience jealousy, and it may not be my default mode. But that doesn't mean that I have skipped this normal human experience. So, what is retroactive jealousy? Like I said, we all experience jealousy at some point or another in our lives, and we have likely experienced retroactive jealousy too. And while this term may be less familiar, the experience definitely is not. So, what is retroactive jealousy? When we start dating someone new, we often float around in that infatuation, honeymoon period, or love bubble, or idealization, where everything that they do is charming and adorable and fantastic. And their flaws get painted over as interesting quirks, and we tend to make more allowances at this juncture than we may at any other point in time. And that doesn't really necessarily sound like an ideal environment for jealousy to thrive, but yet often it does. And retroactive jealousy is the experience of feeling jealous of your partner's past. Most of us, we won't enjoy hearing about an ex's past and their exploits and their lovers, but the retroactive jealousy is not just a brief twinge of discomfort. It is so much more than that. If we are not careful, jealousy of the past can sabotage our relationship's future. So, signs that you have retroactive jealousy. The past is off limits, and we have all likely experienced a partner who refuses to hear anything about our past lovers. And it's not just that they don't want to hear the dirty details, they don't want any details. Complaining about an ex is fine within reason, but they don't want to hear anything that we liked about that relationship, no matter how inconsequential. And if you find yourself shutting down your partner's attempt to share information about their past, you could be experiencing retroactive jealousy. And as adults, we all have a past, and that's normal. But what is not normal is refusing to acknowledge the past. Jealousy isn't necessarily the problem here. The problem is feeling so jealous about the past that we allow it to taint the relationship with our reactions, our current relationship. And if we shut down this sharing, they likely won't be as open with us or feel as safe in the relationship. And if we allow the sharing but then continue on to resent them for their lives long before we were ever a part of them, we are equally likely to sabotage the relationship. Comparison is king. Another sign of retroactive jealousy is that we keep comparing ourselves to former partners. Sometimes this happens as a favorable comparison, and I had a former partner who would point out all the ways that he was better than my past boyfriends. And while he had a point in some circumstances, I began to notice the ways that he was getting hung up on proving himself better. And in the end, he turned out so much worse. It was a competition between him and my past lovers, but he was the only one participating. And this isn't the only way that we'll see retroactive jealousy rear its ugly head. It's actually a form of obsessive compulsive disorder in many situations. And it happens at any time we do a little online reconnaissance mission to find out more about our partner's former lovers. If you have ever looked up your partner's former partner on social media, you may tell yourself that it is idle curiosity and you have likely experienced retroactive jealousy. But comparison also happens when you keep competition alive in your head. And if you're constantly comparing yourself to the people in your partner's past, this is not healthy. The relationship is meant to be between the two people involved, not the people who have been dated before you were ever in this person's life. So doubt, it becomes the uncomfortable third wheel. And if you find yourself harboring all of this suspicion that past partners were in some way superior to you, you have invited that doubt to become the relationship's third wheel. Retroactive jealousy can look like doubting your partner's feelings, and maybe it happens after they shared a positive memory with an ex in passing, or it could simply occur whenever you realize that there was a time when they didn't completely hate their ex, that they actually loved their ex at one time. And when we start doubting a partner's feelings for us just because they have a past with other people, we're putting retroactive jealousy in the driver's seat, and we're allowing our discomfort with their past to dictate how we react in the present. Not only does this make your partner feel uncomfortable, it can make them feel taken for granted, and it can make you take them for granted in the future. It's different when partners give us a reason for our doubts. If they are still in touch with their ex and have poor boundaries within that relationship, having doubts could be a natural extension of what's happening. But simply doubting them because they have a past and they have exes that we are uncomfortable with is jealousy, plain and simple. They aren't doing anything in the present moment to justify the doubts that you're having. So these obsessive thoughts and reactive jealousy. So do you continue to think about their previous relationships? Is there an imaginary scoreboard where you have to constantly prove that you are better and that they are worse? If your thoughts keep returning to the relationships that your partner has had in the past, this is a sign that you are experiencing retroactive jealousy. And it is tempting to do one of two things. We either idealize our partner's past relationships and feel insecure as a result of these imaginings, or we could refuse to consider that their former relationship existed or held any good memories at all. And the reality is not usually that clear cut. It is very, very likely that they once loved former partners and did share good times with them before the relationship changed into something that was no longer more desirable. And while it's normal not to want to think about the object of our affection loving someone else, it is not normal to obsess about that fact when they are involved presently with you. When it moves into stalking and compulsive thoughts that are on a daily basis, this is whenever you need to seek help from a professional. So how to get over retroactive jealousy? Number one, I'm just going to say it, grow up. Retroactive jealousy can be a sign of immaturity. And if you cannot accept that your partner has a past, you may not be mature enough to be dating in the first place or be married. But do you have internalized double standards where it's okay that you had past relationships, but it's not okay that your spouse had past relationships or a certain past relationship? It may be time for you to acknowledge that whatever happened before you were involved with your partner is actually none of your business. And we have all had moments of emotional immaturity and insecurity, and myself included. And while it may be embarrassing to remember this experience, it is important to be self-aware enough to admit that you do have some growing up to do, and realizing that jealousy is not about the past. It's not mature, rational, or reasonable. So you must address your insecurities. Retroactive jealousy definitely stems from personal insecurities. Instead of asking what was so great about their ex, look at the thoughts that arise in your thought process and about yourself, the thoughts about yourself. And if you are afraid that you are not attractive enough, successful enough, or interesting enough, what comparisons are you making, and how might that connect to your self-esteem? If you cannot ignore the jealousy long enough to identify the insecurity in your thought process so that you can begin to build a sense of security and self-worth, you have to seek professional help. Clearly, the person that you're with has chosen to be with you for some reason or another. You can either decide to develop stronger self-esteem or accept that your low self-esteem could likely lead to the breakdown of your relationship if left unchecked. Stop cyber stalking. And in order to overcome retroactive jealousy, it is time to quit cyber stalking and physically stalking our partner's exes in our partner's past. Don't scroll through their past photos on a mission to uncover more about their past. Just ask them. Don't go looking for reasons. Don't go looking up their exes on social media to see how you measure up. Resisting this temptation can help nip retroactive jealousy in the bud and accept that some things are simply not your concern. You're not going to feel better diving into Pandora's box of the past. You have to openly talk about your feelings to overcome retroactive jealousy. Try talking to your partner about it, as this may not be it may be an uncomfortable conversation, but it may be necessary. So talk to them about how jealous you're feeling and the insecurities that trigger you. And instead of making it your partner's problem, admit that it is yours and that you are working on it. But don't just do it in the hopes that they'll rush to reassure you. Instead, just be open about the fact that you can be jealous and that you're working on being more trusting. And if you cannot talk about your feelings to your partner, they should not be your partner to begin with. My name is Sarah Ann Brown, and this is Narcissistic Abuse 101.